your fire burn. Let your fire burn.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Porcupine Perspective. Evelyn, it's been a couple weeks.
It has, Sean. It has been a couple weeks. It's been a very long couple of weeks, let me tell you.
Do tell.
Well, let's see. We are continuing yet another round of renovations to our home. About a year and a half ago, we had a pipe burst inside of our upstairs wall between our upstairs bathroom and kitchen, which flooded our downstairs bathroom. Not 2 months after we had finished renovating the upstairs bathroom, so understandably, we took some time off. We're tackling that now, and it's just been one beating after another. Essentially, down there, we just keep running into problem after problem. We had to redo the plumbing, almost all of it, because it was calcifying and turning green and just horrible. The lovely little, as you call them, fart fans that are supposed to have a duct that leads the moisture away. There was never a duct put on, so it was corroding one of the main pipes and the subflooring underneath the upstairs bathroom away. So it's just, it's like digging for treasure but finding nothing but shit. And dealing with the frustrations therein. That's been the last couple weeks, but I think we're over, hopefully. I'm going to jinx myself and I have no wood to knock on, but I think we're over the biggest hurdles. And yeah. And then after the 4th, we had an out-of-state swim meet. So the girls, my husband and I drove for 3 hours down to Oklahoma and stayed in a hotel room that was not sufficiently cooled, humid and yucky and in an uncomfortable bed, but they had fun. Got back yesterday and I'm exhausted. So, hey, welcome back. I heard, though, while we were gone, that you had a wonderful, wonderful week.
Yes, I did. I don't think it necessarily even pales in comparison to what you're describing there. And, I know it seems coincidental that I just so happen to have a lot of things going on while you were doing the renovation. And I promise it was purely coincidental.
Oh, no, I love the laughing emojis that you were sending when I was
sending the pictures my way to let me know all the, what was it? The shit for treasure you found?
It was great seeing my husband laugh when you were sending back, oh, it sucks to be you, but hey, it is what it is. And it seriously was like one bad turn after another. And, there's a point where we just both looked at each other and like, what, we're just going to get a really big margarita tonight and just try to make peace with ourselves and our marriage. And our marriage already survived the upstairs bathroom, which was even worse. So I think we're going to make it through. But yeah, no, thank you very much for the middle fingers and the laughing faces and all the ha ha ha. But karma came back at you. My little comment earlier about your wonderful week. I don't know if y'all picked up on that. There was some sarcasm in there.
Yeah. I got to deal with our city government. Today, in fact, was the culmination of a long weekend of pulling my hair out. I, again, conveniently made plans to be out of town while they were doing the renovations. And I've got 2 hunting dogs. And what I wanted to do is, instead of putting them in with one of those, what they call boarding kennels or whatever, I decided that it would probably be best to let them hang out with one of my hunting partners, and that way I knew they'd be taken care of. They could run and play, and they knew him. Unfortunately, about an hour after I dropped him off and was getting ready to head out of town for the weekend, they got out. He had left his garage door open. Now, granted, they were inside of a kennel, but they saw him pull away, and he was just pulling away down the street to go get mail or something like that, just leaving for just a second. They saw him leaving, and they thought, this asshole is leaving us, and he's going hunting without us.
Oh, he took the truck.
Yeah, and we are not going to stand by idly. And they broke the kennel in an effort to get out. And then when they did, they do what hunting dogs do. They went hunting for him. Unfortunately for me, I was able to get one of them, but the other one was missing. I had to head out of town, and overnight I started checking the dog pound website that we have here, and lo and behold, I see my asshole.
I just got really bad.
My asshole dog.
Wow, okay, yeah. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
There's amazing things you can find online these days, but there's certain things I never want to come across. Just throwing that out there.
I think I will second that. But My male dog was, of course, on the website, and I contacted them Saturday morning. The first time I got an opportunity, as soon as they opened. They don't keep banker's hours. I think it was like 11 o'clock or whatever during the day when they open. I don't remember. But the ringer that they put me through just to get my dog. And my dog's microchipped. It's got its rabies tag. It's got its other tag. It's licensed. Everything is taken care of. But they didn't reach out to let me know they had my dog. I had to find it. And this jerk off on the phone tells me I've got to have photographic evidence that this is my dog, meaning a picture on my phone or a picture in my possession. I've got to have a copy of the latest receipt of the rabies vaccination. I've got to have a copy of my receipt for the licensing information. I have to have a utility bill proving I live at this address. And then last but not least, I have to have photographic identification with an address that matches the address on all of the other information, along with my smiling face.
Okay, but shouldn't all that already be... Essentially, if you've licensed your dog, that's already registered and everything there. Shouldn't your photo ID with your address matching the name and address that's already registered within the state and in their system be enough?
Yes. Let's put it this way. If I get a firearm sent to an FFL, like any of you that have ever purchased a firearm online, you know they can't send it directly to your house. They have to send it to a firearms licensed dealer. All I've got to do is show photographic evidence, and I can walk out with a gun. But your dog that you've paid to have license, that has tags that are tied to you? No, sir. Not acceptable. It won't work. And of course, you have 72 hours. And I'm out of town. There's no way I can get anyone else. They will not allow anyone else to pick this dog up because...
Even when you explain to them that you weren't here.
Yeah, they don't give a shit. They don't care because they're not in customer service. They've already got their money up front. They don't give a shit. And if you don't pick up your dog, then they get to sell it. They get to adopt it out.
I was going to ask, they don't euthanize it, do they?
Not after 72 hours, no, because there's no money to be made in euthanization. And I'm glad they don't. Don't get me wrong.
Right. I was just worried that that's where it was going to go.
Eventually it could. So I'm back in town Sunday, and of course, by the time we get back in town, there's no way for me to get any of this information. The veterinary's office is not open on Sundays. So I spend part of the morning this morning trying to get all this crap gathered up, go there. They make me walk back in the kennels, and they won't even tell me the rough area it's in, just that if you're looking for a dog, it's on the left. If you're looking for a cat, it's on the right. They know I'm looking for a dog. Don't even tell me about the fucking cats. And you have to go in, and it's separated male versus female. And you walk in, and if any of you guys have ever been to a pound, it is the most heart-wrenching thing you will see with animals, in my opinion. And
it is.
Walk through, and of course, he's in one of the last ones, and I go through all these dogs trying to find mine, and I see him, and you just see that look on his face. He's terrified. He's happy to see me. He's scared. He's whimpering. But you can't get your dog then. No.
So he has to see you, and then you have to walk away from him again.
You got to walk away from him again, which if you love your dog, it's just like your kid. It's hard to do. Mm-hmm. So you go back up there and try to get someone to help you. You give them the number, and then you got to start the whole process of identifying your animal.
Didn't you say they told you it was like signing for a car or something?
Yeah.
You said something like that, like she was joking and you were ticked off when you're talking to us, but she pulls out these papers and she's like, oh, haha, it's like filling out paperwork for buying a car.
And it is. I mean, you're having to initial here, sign here, do this. And the reason they do this, now you've already identified this is your dog. For me, I ended up paying $45 fee for them collecting the dog. An impound fee is what they call it. Like it's a fucking car. Come on, impound fee. But they start tacking stuff on. Now, here's the thing that just fucking makes me madder than hell. They give you two options. You can either A, swear that you are going to get your dog spayed or neutered if it has not already been done. If it already has, then this isn't even part of the process. And you have to pay them $55 up front. And they give you a voucher to take to your veterinary. So it'll take $55 off spaying and neutering. You have 30 days to get your dog spayed or neutered. And if you do not, you have a misdemeanor that you're going to be charged with, and they're going to come knocking at your door because, buddy, they know your address. They'll find you then. They can't find you when your fucking dog's in there. But they will fine you for this, take your ass to jail, and you get to pay even more fines, and your dog still gets spayed or neutered. Or you can take the other option, which they didn't even discuss with me. And in that case, if the dog gets out again, they will forcibly spay or neuter the dog and charge you for it, along with some extra fines if it happens to get out. So you've got something that's your property, something you own. And I hate looking at my animal like my property, but it's not my child. I get that. I understand that. But I'm the one held directly responsible for the actions of this dog. If this dog goes out and bites somebody, if it harms anyone, if it destroys property, I am held directly liable. So in that case, I consider it a form of my property. But you are extorted to get your dog back. What world does that make fucking sense? You pay your licensing fees. You pay your taxes. You do all your shit right. Guess what? Tough shit, buddy. And we're not even going to give you the option to breed your dog if you wanted to. You know why? Because we're the government.
Now you have what breed is your dog?
It's a German Wirehair. It's a pointer/retriever.
Oh, so it's a purebred too.
Yeah, it is a purebred, and I have considered it, and not necessarily breeding for profit.
But to continue the line when he's no longer, because he's only got another few years of hunting in him, right?
Just depending on how hard the hunting is, but he comes from a really strong line, and it would be nice to pass on that dog's line to my children.
Right.
You know, that's a line that they grew up with and they could continue to have. Whether they hunt or not, they're excellent guard dogs as well.
Doing like pick of the litters. When you stud them out, you get the pick of the litter, you take the one puppy and then train him with the father, and then you've got the continuation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
my dad used to do that, sorry.
We've got a female, but I've already had her taken care of because honestly, I don't want
I've heard about your female dog. She's very sweet. And let me say, I've been around this dog, and she's one of those that just loves, but you look in her eyes and you can tell that somewhere the wires just didn't connect. She's so sweet, but she's
dumb.
Oh my.
And she doesn't hunt. She's not scared of guns or anything like that, but she just kind of jumps up and down and wants to be part of it, which is great. I still take her out because I want her to experience it, but I'll be honest, she couldn't find a sock on the floor in front of her.
It's true. Poor thing.
So anyway, we just to avoid that from happening, we went ahead and took care of it. But originally I hadn't even planned of talking about this today. But and you can probably tell in my voice. It's
you were hot when I got over here this evening, and it's been hours.
Yes.
I mean, you sent messages to my husband. He's forwarded them on to me, and just like, oh shit. So I knew this was going to come up tonight, but how much did it end up costing you to get him out?
$125. Now part of that it's in the form of vouchers if you go ahead and get these things taken care of, but it's still extorted out of you. You have to have a microchip, which I already do.
Did they not scan the microchip?
They did, but somehow, some way, the information didn't get entered in correctly by the company. So
Gotcha.
That's going to be ass chewing number 2 tomorrow. But even then, they've got everything they need. If this dog had harmed someone, they would have been knocking them on.
Right, immediately.
They could have found me. They would have found me, but there was nothing to be gained by finding me. So therefore, they put you through the ringer, and thank you, government. So it's one of those. I was already kind of in a foul mood. The 4th of July puts me in a foul mood. It used to be my favorite holiday. It was kind of like my Christmas for years and years and years. And then I went down this journey, and I hate to say it, it's now one of my least favorite holidays out of all of them. And the reason being is that it reminds me of how deep the illusion is of freedom. Now, here in Wichita, where we're at, you can't even shoot fireworks that go over 6 foot off the ground. Now, I mean, you're taking a chance.
To be fair, they cite not wanting, with all the houses being closer together in a more urban environment, they don't want fires going off, which in the dry years, I can almost understand. But folks, if you've been listening to this podcast at all over the last 2 months, you will understand that this has been an insanely wet year. Like, was it the day before we had another, 2 inches on July 3rd or something like that? So, I mean, this is not a dry area at all.
I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach with this. Which do you think is more likely to set fire to something? Something you shoot in the air and burns out in the air and is almost completely burned out before it hits the ground?
Or something that's below 6 feet, yes.
or a fountain that's spewing flame less than 6 foot off the ground.
No, I get your point. I was just trying to say common sense wise on a year that you think that their cited reasoning would be of the lowest risk possible. It was still.
Yeah, and yes, I mean, you're correct there, but even there, the thinking is backwards. Why? Because it's the government.
No, I get it.
Anything
Devil's advocate is all I was doing.
Anything they can see from a patrol car is fair game, and you do not want to get fined. You do not want that to happen because they charge you by the each. I'd be willing to bet. And God knows what it would be. But that kind of brings us into the topic that we wanted to discuss. And for me, it's we surround ourselves with these symbols of freedom. We keep telling ourselves, deluding ourselves that we're free in this country. And I will grant this. Are we freer than a lot of countries out there? Yeah, absolutely. You look at our closest cousin, like in England, there's memes they can't even post.
Right.
You know, the freedom of speech over there has never really been guaranteed like it is here. And they're paying the penalty. They're paying the cost. But the thing is, I don't want to look and see that we're better off.
Right.
No, you're absolutely right. Because
are we getting what they're touting? Is that essentially what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm saying that as long as you're comparing and say, well, at least we're not as bad as them, as long as they continue to go worse, then we can continue to go worse and lose more freedom and still be, well, at least we're not those guys. No, hell no. Draw the line in the sand and say, we're done with this bullshit. And it's more than just fireworks. Obviously, it's more than just fireworks, but a dog. Come on. Give me my damn dog back. Don't put me through the ringer. You want to charge me $45 for lodging, for taking care of it, for feeding it, watering it, and walking it? I got it. I would be glad to pay for that because you kept the dog off the street and hopefully prevented it from getting hurt, run over by a car. That I accept. Forcing me to spay or neuter my animal? Who the fuck do you think you are?
Government.
Rhetorical.
I know.
No, I appreciate it. And like I said, it's still really...
It's
really
raw right now.
Yeah.
I know.
It is, because, I mean, you've got, on the one hand, you've got the emotions from having a member of your family locked in a prison that didn't know any better. I mean, it didn't maliciously go out to do something. But at the same time, you're getting fucked over by the government, and they know it's a member of your family, and you will do anything to get it back, and you will accept the rawest of deals to get a member of your family back. And that's kind of how the government operates. And then you've got the people that are running around here saying, if you're not celebrating the 4th of July, then there must be something wrong with you. You need to move. They lament the fact that, why are my fireworks going up? Maybe it has something to do with the trade war we're dealing with China, where all of your fireworks are made. But that's what pisses you off? The fact that you had to pay 10% more? There was a news story about one of the football teams that was running the tents, and they were upset that 10% they were going to have to pass on to the consumer, or even more than that, just so that they maintained some level of profitability for the football team, which I support. That's great. That's going towards a school, going towards athletics.
It's a high school football team you're talking about, right?
Yeah, one of the local ones. But that's what upsets you? The fact that the fireworks are more expensive, not every other thing that you purchase that comes from China, or all the things they should be purchasing from us that they're not, and we're having to give relief dollars to the farmers, for instance, to re-subsidize even more of our agriculture because China was one of the biggest importers of it. But your fireworks that you have to buy for one damn day? Yeah. And that's the symbol for freedom. For you. That's your celebration of freedom. And you don't even realize the government's got its dick in your ass.
Again, you're hitting the visuals strong today. Appreciate it. You're getting hot. I'm trying to bring a little bit of levity. That's all. But granted, this is something that should make us angry.
I told you I hate this holiday. And this was the icing on the turd cake.
Boy, there's just been shit for everybody. It's just been a shitty week.
It's a shit buffet. It's like the Golden Corral.
The poo-poo platter.
Yeah, the poo-poo platter at the Chinese restaurant. It's annoying to see. I'm not going to lie. You look at the people, and go celebrate. Do what you want to do. I'm not here to shit on your fireworks. That's not what I'm here to do. But don't delude yourself and tell yourself that you're free, and you're doing it because you're free. You're free as long as you operate within the lines that are drawn for you. And if you haven't noticed that those lines are getting drawn closer and closer, and there's less and less room for you to operate in, then you're not paying attention. Now, speaking of the lines getting drawn closer, holy shit, did you watch the debates for the Democratic National Convention?
I did. Both nights. I guess there's another one coming up here soon. And just let me preface this by saying I know we're going to be covering some the stuff with the debate for the DNC. Please understand that I don't know if they're even going to have a Republican, because I think they're pretty much saying Trump's going to take it. However, as things start progressing, guys, we will be covering all of this. This is not going to be a bashing of the Democratic side or bashing of the Republican side. This is really us trying to take a look at the continuation of things that are happening and growing and pushing those lines. This is really trying to take that objective look and saying, hey, did you catch this? And the way they're turning this phrase really doesn't mean the way they're trying to say that it is. Does that make, I hope that I explained that right.
No, I think you did. And what you will hear from Donald Trump will most likely be an answer to some of the more probing stances that are, what are you laughing about me using the word probing now?
No, just having any solid answer given by Trump other than it's fantastic, it's wonderful, and the most amazing thing that's ever happened in this planet.
While I will agree, this
from
is
whatever party he came from, he's just a giant douche, guys. I'm sorry, he's a giant orange Cheeto douche.
I did not know they made that flavor of douche, but
there's a reason why there's a one and only.
We'll probably best to keep it this way. But yes, hopefully we will at least be involved with the libertarian debates as well. I'm kind of interested to see what they're able to put forth. But before we go too deep, and again, we're not going to get very deep into this, kind of the broad strokes, I want to take a quick break and hear from our sponsor. I want to take a quick moment to talk about the app that makes this podcast possible, Anchor.fm. Anchor gives you everything you need in one place to create, record, and edit your podcast so it sounds great. Best part, it's absolutely free. They will help you distribute your podcast as well, so you can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many, many more. Anchor also makes it very easy to monetize your podcast by hooking you up with sponsors right off the bat, so you can begin to make money with no minimum listenership. And all you need to do is go to Anchor.fm or download the Anchor app, and you too can get started today. All right, welcome back, and we're going to start the shindig off by going over a few of the big topics that we saw during the debate. So if you want to go ahead and start us off.
Sure. So obviously one of the main points, and I think it's been a point of contention for the last several elections at least, I don't even want to know how far back, is healthcare. What are the options that the candidates are really pursuing and hitting hard? Right now, the big thing is whether it's going to be single payer, so Medicare for all, kind of like the Sanders deal where that's your only option. You use the government's, that's it. Versus the other half that says they definitely want that to be a primary option, so keeping moving forward with the Obamacare, but that they also want to keep private healthcare as an option for those who want to take it. So there's really kind of two camps on that right now.
Right, and the split's not even really that wide. Both of them, it's obvious that both of them want to heavily subsidize healthcare, and they want to give everyone access to it. And while I will say that that's a great goal, and as a society, should it be our goal to make sure that we're all taken care of? Absolutely. I don't think, on the other hand, that their assertion that healthcare is a right is correct. Because anytime you say that you have a right to someone else's labor, someone else's expertise, someone else's product, they are now your slave, and you can conscript them at any time to provide a service for you, whether you actually need it or not. Or worse, you have to go through an intermediary, say the government or some kind of need-based board, to determine whether or not this surgery is something you should or should not have. And we saw a good instance of that with that little kid in London. I can't remember his name. That was not allowed to leave the hospital because they had exhausted all that they were willing to do. And Italy had agreed to...
I forgot about that case. Yeah, that was heart-wrenching.
And the likelihood of this kid surviving was very low, but
as a parent, are you not going to exhaust every single thing possible on this planet to try to help your kid, regardless of how slim the chances are? I mean, it would be unimaginable for me to have somebody else step in and say, yeah, he's done. Sorry about it. We're not going to try anything else. We're not going to waste our time.
Yeah, it's like the mechanic coming up and saying, I think you need to trade it in for a new model. The engine's toast. Fuck you. No, I don't want the government to have the ability to make life and death decisions for anyone, whether it be a war, whether it be the death penalty, and especially for taking care of children or the elderly, because those are going to be the two most at risk, especially the elderly. Mm-hmm. Because let's be honest here, the usefulness of a human being decreases over time. And the older you get, the more decrepit you get, the less value you have to society. I could absolutely see, and we have seen governments make that assertion and make that decision. I do not feel comfortable with that. So not only do I don't like the fact that they consider this a right and that the rest of us have to pay for it, but the fact that you give life or death decisions to a government that's honestly not even held responsible to you for its decisions sounds like a really bad recipe. Now, does it work in some of the countries? And, I'm not even trying to be hyperbolic with this one issue, but, the one that we were talking about in London, for instance. But it definitely shines a light on it. And with a lot of these arguments that they make, they're also hyperbolic. They take these one instances of this one woman that could not get an abortion that she absolutely needed because of this, and they make their entire case based on this one little blip. Now, and before anyone mistakes what I'm saying here, I think women should have access to that if that's something that they choose. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I sure as hell can't make the decision for them, and I can't tell them they can't make it.
Right. And with that being a hot button topic lately, of course, with everything going on in Alabama and in some other states, that, of course, was tied into different parts of the conversation on both nights of the debate. Anytime they're talking about healthcare, a lot of the candidates would, of course, have to throw in, and I absolutely support the females' right to decide what happens with their body. I will say, and a friend of mine brought this up last night, we were kind of going back and forth on it, how he was excited to hear some of the things that Castro was bringing forward, and that he was taking a very strong stance on that. And it was nice for him to hear somebody this early on take a very strong stance. And I started laughing a little bit because there was one point where he started going down that path of the woman's right to choose, especially when it comes to abortion. And by the way, I also support that for the trans women. It's also important that they have that right to choose. And I'm sure he meant it as far as, making sure it was all inclusive and everything. But the fact that he had just been talking about the right to choose when it came to abortion, it was a very odd segue where I was like, that's not how that works. Like, it's not how that works. Anyway, it was a bit of levity there, and I was talking to my friend about it, and he just kind of stopped and he went, yeah, he did do that, didn't he? It was just a little moment in there where I was kind of like, oh, that didn't quite work out the way I thought that you thought it was going to.
Absolutely. And the other side of this, and we're never going to hear this, so I'm not holding my breath, but I have yet to hear one of these people say a damn word about the father's rights when it comes to right to choose. And you're not going to hear that. And honestly, maybe it'll come out later, but even at this point, no one is even willing to put themselves out on enough of a limb to solidify themselves on a stance of whether or not there should be some kind of a limit on abortion laws. As far as, how far along term-wise, should there be any limits? Nobody will answer that. I think they tried to nail Warren down on that, and she just kept reverting the conversation back to, we'll talk about birth control. Yeah, it goes back to birth control. She would not give herself a stance, and I don't know if anybody will. No, they're not going to. And what I'm speaking to here, guys, is one of the biggest things you see it in memes all the time. You hear it as a talking point. Consent to sex is not consent to pregnancy. And I agree with that 100%. However, if the female decides that she wants to keep the child and the male does not, now keep in mind, if everything's equal here, consent to sex is not consent to having a child. She decides against his wishes she's going to keep the child. He's on the hook for 18 years, at least 18 years for taking care of a child. So why is it that a guy cannot have any say in it whatsoever and disavow any rights to it? The government will track him down.
Well, even vice versa. If you are able to pursue it that direction, there should be some consideration going the other way, where if the woman doesn't want to keep it, doesn't want the financial obligation of having to have a child, not just financial or even personal obligations that come with that, but say the father does. That's where it's tougher for me, because if you have somebody there that was an equal part in making it, and granted, speaking as a woman, you're the one that has to put in, and
Right.
It changes your body, it changes everything permanently when you go through that. So I understand it's a large decision, but trying to put myself into the shoes and think from the other point of view, knowing that you created a child and that you want that child, and that any option that you have moving forward is completely out of your hands. It's tough. And I don't know if there really is any reconciling that,
No.
because it's the impossible situation. It really is.
And in the situation, I want to make sure we're clear here. In a situation where the male wants to keep it and the female does not, I think her say supersedes his at that point.
Agreed. That's the emotional part for me. I think that's the hardest.
And it would be tough. I can't imagine being that guy, but the old saying, be careful who you're having sex with, or at least take precautions on your end.
Absolutely. I am going to switch gears here a little bit, though, or segue us over, because, of course, a part of the healthcare conversation also involved the critiques of big pharma and how big business and things
And
like
big
that
corporations
are a
big
big
boogeyman.
problem. Yes.
And
so I knew you wanted to have some words on that.
And that seemed to be their scapegoat. And that's been the big scapegoat for the longest time for the left. And I understand they're very fearful of the corporations, because corporations can amass a lot of power. And in the mind of the left, if I understand it correctly, there's no democratic process, or at least in their mind, they're not representative of the people. Now, I think that's utter bullshit, because a corporation is not going to get big unless it has the support of consumers. It's just not going to happen. It's got to have someone purchase its product, service, or idea in reality. In a true free market, that's what's supposed to happen.
Agreed. But do you feel, and not taking a side here, but just devil's advocating here, do you feel that larger corporations, especially the really big ones, have their fingers too much in the lobbyists and in the government and in controlling the direction things go that obviously benefit them and not necessarily everyone else?
I absolutely do, and which is why I am adamantly against the system that we have. Because, the corporations can influence laws and regulations to their benefit. In fact, they do. Some of the biggest lobbies make it almost impossible for competition to come up. They are creating monopoly, but that's the part of the monopoly that the government never speaks to. The government is necessary for a monopoly. I don't like the fact that things are manipulated for their favor. They should be manipulated for no one's favor. There should be zero manipulation. There should be a free flipping market. No tax incentives to get a corporation to come somewhere else. Why should they have to pay less taxes? Or why should they have to pay more taxes because they make more money? Everything should be a level playing field. Everyone should have equal access to opportunity. And the government's the only thing that can impede that. In my opinion, I know they think it's the big boogeyman, but their answer is to get more government. Well, if you already have a high level of infiltration with these corporations, and you are going to try to amass more government power to fight it, the only way you are going to prevent this corporate sway over our governmental process is to nationalize these corporations. Let's be honest. You make them part of the government and they're government controlled. That's the only way that the dollars aren't going to affect it. And you and I both know that nationalization is not going to do anyone any good. But you look at some of the stuff they say, and it's almost like that's the framework that they're lying right in front of us. A Venezuela style, we need to break up these corporations. We need to not allow them. It's like with the earlier story. I'm not going to go back too deep into that, but the government saying what you can and you can't do. Well, as a corporation, you've been too successful. You've provided a product or a service that has benefited the public, and you've become too successful. And we can't allow that. And it makes sense when you say it like that, because what does the government want? Failure. They do not want you successful unless they can tax it.
Right. No, it's interesting, though, 'cause the main point they're using to attack a lot of the big corporations, I know Amazon was brought up a lot, it really falls back continually to the greed of insurance and pharma companies.
Yeah.
And to the point, I think one of them even wanted criminal liability for companies that manufacture opioid drugs. Right.
I was actually speaking to someone about that today, and they're like, well, yeah, that makes sense. Why shouldn't you go after them? They're not the ones prescribing it. They don't stock the fucking shelves with it.
Right. Well, the candidate that brought that up, I think it was Booker that was speaking about that.
Yes.
Because he actually started with a point that I agree with the fact that we failed in the war on drugs trying to, I think he put it as trying to arrest our way out of a drug problem. Clearly, that's not the answer. But his was, well, you go after the manufacturers. And it's just, again, like you said, it's going into creating more regulation, more law, more things as opposed to... if you're in pain, you want this drug. You need this drug. Many of us that are listening to this have been in that type of pain, whether it's post-surgery, whether you've had dental work done. And I'm not a big fan of them. I don't like the way they make me feel, I'll be honest. But there are times when the only way you're going to go to sleep afterward, and the only way you're going to get over it is to have that pain subside, just so you can get to sleep and do something somewhat normal. Why go after the companies that manufacture this highly effective drug that takes care of that, as opposed to the guy that's giving you 25 to 30% more than what you actually need and is refilling your prescriptions? Now, I guarantee you someone's going to say, well, this is yet again a failure of the private markets. No, the fuck it's not. This is one of the most heavily regulated industries in the United States. And they go, why does it cost so much? I don't know, because government's got its finger on the scale. You can't compete. They make it impossible. Well, if you think that government's not benefiting, including many of these candidates, from the fact that big pharma and insurance companies are bringing in the amount of money that they are, you just need to sit down and just sit out. Because, come on. It's all a part of the same network.
It absolutely is part of the same network. And don't get me wrong, I understand that these pharmaceutical companies go and they bribe the doctors
of course.
to sell their particular product. But that's no different than going to like a mechanic's shop and trying to sway people to use Snap-on versus Mac versus whatever tools.
It's what happens already. It's just on a much grander scale.
It absolutely is. And like when I go to the doctor, for instance, the main doctor that I use is very, very busy. And woe be unto you if you really need her help, because she's that good at what she does. But they have a multitude of doctors in there. And if I go in for the same problem with 3 different doctors, I get 3 different types of antibiotics. And these aren't any opioids, obviously. But antibiotics, I get 3 different brands of antibiotics, and it's always the same one from the same doctor, if that makes sense. Like the last doctor.
So Dr. A always prescribes you the same one. Dr. B always prescribes you a different one. Dr. C prescribes you a third option, but each one has their
pets.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Is that clear cut that they're being bribed? No, not necessarily. But we go back to my days in the restaurant industry. One of our biggest customers were pharmaceutical reps. and they would go and they would cater lunches to these doctors' offices. And why do you think they did that?
Entice them to buy their product.
Oh, they were just swell people, and they were hungry, and they were trying to take care of their fellow guy. Yes, it was to entice them. And again, I don't even necessarily have an issue with that per se, but don't go after the manufacturers. It's like these idiots when someone, when there's a shooting, for instance, they want to go after the manufacturers of the guns or the manufacturers of the bullets. No, it's the individual that makes the choice that should be held accountable, not the people that are just manufacturing a product to be put on the shelves. They don't know you.
You know, you bring up a good point, though. This is something I hadn't initially thought about. This is the first year I've watched this event where guns really weren't a huge... I mean, they were touched on, but it really wasn't a big part of the conversation. Maybe it'll happen at the next one, but I have to say this is one where I really didn't... I mean, did you catch more than I did? Because I was kind of surprised that it wasn't brought up more, considering they were in Florida where the whole Parkland thing happened last year. So I really thought this was going to be a much larger part of the conversation. It just wasn't there.
I would imagine that polling data has shown that that's not a hot topic right now with people. And the other side of it is, in order to win, they are going to have to convince as many people that are, let's say, moderate Republicans or independents who may have a different view or a less restrictive view on guns. So hitting that.
They are taking a different stance. I've never heard them come in to a Democratic convention before and talk about how they are the party of the working man. From my knowledge, there was never much of a focus on the middle class. It was either on the higher end of the spectrum or the lower, if that makes sense. And I think they realized maybe that's kind of what cost them the election last time, is that Trump was able to really go in and appeal to this larger middle margin. And so now they're kind of, again, correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like they're trying to kind of get a jump on that and saying, yeah, we're your party. We're working here for you, for the middle class, for the working man. We are your party. I heard that a lot. Yeah.
And one of the things that Trump capitalized on was jobs. And of course, that applies to the working man and the middle class. Now, don't get me wrong. Those on the lower ends need jobs just as much as everyone else.
Absolutely.
But it seems to me that the majority of at least that push was geared towards him with Trump, and that's where they're going to attack. And honestly, I'm surprised they didn't in the last election, because unions, which are obviously comprised of working people, are very strong supporters of the Democrats.
No, I agree. It was just, this was the first time I really heard it blatantly stated in recent memory. So it was just... yeah. And it's a strategy. I mean, you want to go in, you want to win, you're going to capitalize on whatever aspect you feel is going to help you. So I don't blame him for it. It was just one of those where I was like, well, that's new.
Yeah, or at least new in the last couple of elections. But I think you're on to something. They're absolutely looking to position themselves in as many hot spots as possible. Immigration was one of the other ones that they hit a lot. You'll notice that there was a lot of Spanish speaking going on, which they were broadcasting on Univision at the same time.
Telemundo.
Or Telemundo.
Yeah.
Sorry, my apologies. At the same time, I get it and I understand, but it's just like that god-awful commercial with Elizabeth Warren that was drinking a beer so that she appeared more approachable to the working man. They're pandering.
I haven't seen that commercial.
Do yourself a favor, don't. It's terrible. You can actually see her grimace when she tries to drink the beer.
Well, I get that. I'm not a beer drinker personally, but I digress. But you brought up the immigration, and again, should you be newer to our podcast, if you go back to one of our earlier episodes, there is one focused on immigration, so you can hear our kind of stance on that. However, so far at least, again, it is, like you said, that hot button issue, especially with the current detention centers that we've got. And I don't even think we went into that in the earlier episode, and maybe we should have one that kind of goes over that. But it's gotten to a point here that is deeply troubling and saddening to me, seeing what's happening with these families and these kids. And it's a very disturbing thing to see happen within our country. And I don't know how else I can put that into words. It's just, it's incredibly sad.
It's
You can't tell me that there aren't better options and that there haven't been better options and to put these people into jail cells. I mean, look what you went through with your dog this morning, and these are human beings who have gone through hell. Wherever, regardless of what your stance is, whether you think it's right or wrong for them to be coming over, the fact is this is not an easy journey. This is a very difficult thing to go through, and put yourselves in the shoes of a parent trying to do this with your child. And especially from these kids' point of views, they don't know what's going on. They know that their parents are telling them probably they're going somewhere better to make their lives better, or maybe they're not explaining anything. And then they get here, mom and dad are taken away, and they're put into essentially jail cells. What is that going to do long term, even short term, to these kids? This is just, oh, God.
It goes very well with what we were talking about earlier with the parents in London with the kid. You said it exactly. What would you not do for your children? Ask yourself this question. How shitty does it have to be for you to embark on this journey? And this is not a pleasure cruise. There's not people that are there giving you water and taking care of you. There are people that are dying in the deserts, dying in the back of vehicles. They are taking an enormous risk that they're even going to be taken to the United States and not grabbed for human trafficking. Imagine how much of that is happening with these children and the females.
I really can't.
And no, I'm not trying to take it to a negative place, but
it is a negative place. So this whole thing is just negative. And like I said, if you support these detention centers, honest to God, shame on you. Whatever your stance is on this, whether you think they should be here, whether you think they shouldn't, there is no level of thinking that makes it okay to put these people in these quarters. It's just not. You can mince words. You can say whatever you want to say. These are concentration camps, period.
Mm-hmm. The only
Nothing
thing
else
is
you're going to tell me that's ever going to change my mind on that. And if you've really looked into this situation at all, you'll see it. So, again, you know what? DNC, there's at least some direction where they're wanting to undo these immediately and take them down. I support that. I'm glad somebody's stepping forward and saying that, because I'm sure as hell not hearing that anywhere on the other side.
But we got to be fair here.
Ugh.
Keep in mind.
I know.
Well, you don't know what I'm going to say.
I'm saying I know, and I have to be fair. You are right there. That was the one point where they're on there. I'm like, whether they follow through on it or not,
that's the
obviously,
problem.
who knows? But at least somebody is saying something moving forward and not justifying them being there. That's all I've heard so far from Captain Cheeto, is justifying these and making them seem, oh, it's glamorous, it's great, I'm taking care of everything, it's wonderful, it's wonderful. Go fuck yourself.
Obama was pretty horrible on deportation and immigration. If you remember, his numbers were pretty outstanding. Now, obviously, Trump's outpacing him now,
right?
But Obama was, the second coming of Christ for most of the Democrats. Like, he was perfection, and that stain is upon him. Just like the stain of having, until now, the most sustained kills by drones and other stuff in other countries that we shouldn't be involved in. So all I'm saying is, yes, it'll be great if it actually comes to fruition. But the problem that we run into, and we see this with every president, the campaign trail is quickly forgotten.
Yeah. No, I know that.
Very shortly after election. Now, why that is, I'm not even going to go into the tinfoil hat mode. That's for another day. But we have to sit here and look, and like Trump, we're no longer we're not going to put any more troops in Afghanistan. We're going to bring the troops home. We're going to do this. These drone wars are stupid. This is stupid. And then days after he's in office, well, leaving Afghanistan is going to be a bad idea, so let's not do that.
No, don't think I'm sitting here saying, oh, man, we got to get them in because they're going to take care of this problem. I'm not naive enough to go down that road.
I know that.
For me, like I said, it was just somebody's at least saying
they're recognizing
on a
it.
national platform,
not
one of those, well, we'll talk about it and then I can rephrase it later if in case I can say they misquoted me. This was live televised across the board. That I at least appreciated.
I don't. And here's why. And I get where you're coming from. I'm not naysaying.
No, you're fine.
But there's only one reason they're saying it.
To get votes.
To show that there is a large degree of separation between them and Captain Cheeto. as you like to call them, or as I like to call them. That's the only reason. See, I'm different over here. You should vote for me. I really don't give a fuck about you. But I'm going to tell you do, because every time we vote, we get fooled.
Oh, absolutely.
And hopefully we're getting closer and closer to that threshold where people go, okay, the jig's up.
Yeah.
I know better. But
well, you want to talk about big promises. The last thing I kind of wanted to skip on here, and I know we're running a little bit long, or longer than we initially had anticipated, but obviously education. As far as college levels, right?
Oh,
free
God,
college.
Yes.
That's the other really, really big one going on, where you have people either pushing for college to be completely free, or at least community college levels to be free, or then reduced, or universities reduced if you earn under a certain amount per year. Mm-hmm. And then there's also the contention that they would like student debt forgiven completely. But again, there's never really an answer on where they're going to find the funds to do this. There's
I've got
no
the answer.
addressing. I know you know where it is, and we all know where it is. But there's also no addressing, maybe correcting where the problem is stemming from.
Well, again, this is another one of those very heavily regulated sectors. Mm-hmm. There's also the mandatory component on it. Sounds familiar, like Obamacare. But yeah, they say free, but it's not free. Someone has to pay for it. Someone's
right.
on the hook for it, or someone's losing out. And I am not a fan of colleges. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a fan at all. I think they've overinflated the prices. They haven't provided a higher level of service, and they've been allowed to do this because they have guaranteed loans.
Not just higher level of service, it's also the fact that year after year after year, even though the service isn't improving in any way, the amount you pay for that same level of service is exponentially increasing.
Because they're not on the hook
exactly.
for production, and they have guaranteed money. The government guarantees and backs these loans, so the banks have no problem. Mm-hmm. If I went, and I was 18 years old, right out of high school, and I tried to get a $20,000 loan to open a business,
not going to happen.
Not going to happen unless I have collateral to my name, which I'm 18 years old.
But you can sure as hell borrow $50,000.
Or $100,000
for 4 years of college.
More for 4 years of college. And that's not even an asset that you actually have. They don't know that you're going to complete it.
They don't know you're even going to be guaranteed a job to begin to repay it.
Right. There's no material value to that degree. And any abstract value is decreasing year after year mm-hmm. as the market becomes more and more flooded with these. Now, luckily, there's alternatives. We talked a little bit about like the online versions.
Versions, tech schools, yeah.
That are hopefully going to be the way that stuff goes. But this free. Everything is free. There's nothing free. Anything that the government gives you has to be first taken from someone else. And I will at least give Bernie Sanders credit here. I mean, he sounded like a madman on the stage.
Ooh, he was aggressive.
Very aggressive. And it took 4 or 5 times. But the question they asked, okay, you want Medicare for all. Is that not going to increase the taxes on the middle class? And he finally admitted it. Yeah, it's going to increase taxes even further on the middle class, but they'll have health insurance.
Right.
Yeah.
But at least he admitted it. That's moving forward. And I'm not going to, you know what? I will be very honest with you. There is that part of me, because I do have student debt, and a fair amount of it, because I have my master's degree, which was necessary within my field to continue on. It's just like you said, it's kind of saturated, and a bachelor's not what a bachelor's used to be.
Yeah, it's a diploma now. It
pretty much is. But that being said, although it was the right choice within my profession and for my family, I now have a fair amount of student debt that needs to be taken care of, and we're doing our best to responsibly pay that back. And we knew going in what that responsibility was going to be and what it was going to entail. So to be honest with you, having somebody say, hey, you know what? Yeah, we're going to kind of wipe that out and start with a clean slate. There's that part of me that will go, man, that would be so nice. And that would open up my ability to do so much more for and with my family. You know, there was no summer vacation for us. There wasn't the funds for it. You know, that's one of the reasons why we did the Oklahoma swim meet, because it was something that got them out and going somewhere else, and that was able to be kind of juggled. So is there that part of you that, man, that would be so nice to have that weight of that taken off of our shoulders? But I could never justify it at the cost of somebody else.
And see, that's
as
the problem.
wonderful as it sounds and as enticing as it is, that I would never feel okay with that.
Yeah, and I agree with you. It would be nice to see some of the friends that I have not have to worry about that. But at the same time, I look at a good or service that I provide in my daily life, and for someone to come up and go, well, I know you worked really hard all this week, and I know you did everything that you were supposed to have done this week, and you took care of what you needed to take care of. But, all the customers that you helped and you provided a service for, yeah, they shouldn't have to pay for it. So we're not going to allow you to collect on any of that debt that they have to you. And it's really swell of you doing that for us, and really looking out for the little guy. And yeah, I'm real sorry you're not going to be able to pay your bills, but, maybe better luck next time.
Yeah, the cost is too high. And I know that sounds kind of funny. He's talking about a financial thing, but it literally is. It's going to affect everyone else, and that there's no justification for that. I would never do anything knowingly or willingly to benefit myself at the cost of another person. Right.
And by cost, we don't necessarily mean just financial. I mean, that's the cost of another individual's freedom. And not to mention it's the cost of your freedom, too, because at any time that can be turned on you, just like in the example I used.
Absolutely.
And you give them an inch, they'll take 1,000,000 miles. You and I both know it. We've seen it. And our listeners, I guarantee, have seen instances of it as well. As enticing as it sounds, it's literally a deal with the devil.
You made a comment when we were discussing this about how there was so much free. It's never free if someone else is paying for it.
No. And I think that's a good place to go ahead and wrap it up. Guys, we thank you for listening yet again. If you get a chance, make sure you subscribe. Leave us a 5-star review. That helps open us up to new listeners. We've actually seen a good increase in the amount of downloads. Any of you guys that are new to the podcast, welcome. We definitely appreciate it. We do have a Facebook page, Porcupine POV. We also have a webpage, porcupinepov.com. You can go there, interact in either place with us. So with that, we'll go ahead and leave you, and we'll see you next episode.
Have a good one, everybody.
Always look back over your shoulder. Waiting around to make your move. Don't hold back, come on and get down to it. Live your life the way that you want to.